Western and Southern, preparing for your financial future can be easier than you think. Go to westernsouthern.com for more information.
So this question is from Sam Morris, an Australian Texans superfan, apparently. Hey guys, love the show. Tune in every episode. I'd love to hear what you think about a few of the Texans players. We've already covered DJ Reader, but specifically the early returns on the offensive line upgrades, he says, as if, well, we'll be the judge of that. Like Titus Howard, Max Sharping, and Laramie Tunsil. So how has this, let's talk about this Texans offensive line generally, and then probably we'll end up folding in a little bit of the sort of relationship with quarterback Deshaun Watson in there as well, because that's always going to be relevant to how the Texans offensive line is playing.
So the Texans offensive line has crept back toward average.
There you go.
They've done it. Since giving up 2 sacks in week 1, Laramie Tunsil has not given up any, only given up 6 total pressures other than his 2 sacks, so that's 8 total on the year, 85.8 pass blocking grade. That's really good.
Good math.
Thank you.
6 plus 2.
See, I can do more than just percentages. So, simple arithmetic is in there too. So Tunsil has been good. Max Sharping, 50.8 grade. Inconsistent.
Yeah, this is the best number, though, that I think articulates the creep back toward average thing.
What's that?
Just in terms of overall grade for all members of the Texans offensive line this season, they rank 15th. Right slap bang in the middle.
There it is.
Ish.
They've crept back toward average.
Yeah.
And I really think those games where Watson's getting sacked 4, 5, 6 times, a lot of it is on him trying to create.
Sure.
I pulled out a number the other night, too, because I was looking at, we track in rhythm and out of rhythm throws. Do you know for all the great plays Watson makes outside of the pocket and all that stuff, when he's off rhythm, in other words, in rhythm is you get to the top of the drop, you either hit your first read or you get like 1 or 2 hitches to get to your next read, and then after that you're off rhythm. When he's in rhythm, he's got the number 2 PFF passing grade in the NFL, 91. Off rhythm, it's a 44. So while he does make those spectacular plays, he also takes too many sacks, fumbles. So if you can knock him off rhythm or he takes himself off rhythm, he is a completely different quarterback, despite being a really good, what seems like he makes a lot of plays outside of structure. You know what I'm saying?
And if you look at the average time in the pocket, so that includes scrambles, plays that turn into scrambles, that kind of thing, he has the 3rd longest average time to throw. The longest is Josh Allen, which again makes sense. That kind of quarterback, right?
Yeah.
The guy that holds the ball too long. The 2nd is still obnoxiously Kirk Cousins, which is just inexcusable.
Not that type of quarterback.
No. And then the 3rd is Deshaun Watson. The next guy is Marcus Mariota. Again, same kind of quarterback in terms of holds the ball too long, causes a lot of his own problems. Then up in the top 10 as well are Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, those kinds of players. Again, hold on to the ball too long. But this is what we're talking about. The Texans' offensive line is still, it's 22nd in terms of pass blocking efficiency just by numbers. It's 15th in terms of overall grade, and that's with a quarterback that is stressing them out in terms of asking them to do a tougher job than other people.
Yeah, so Titus Howard, 61.5 grade. I mean, some of so the 2 rookies have been, just okay. But we're seeing overall, like you said, as a unit, it's been better. So that's kudos to the Texans O-line.
Yeah.
Nick Martin at 61.9, Zach Fulton 58.9, and then so if you look at the actual grade breakdowns, it is a bunch of guys who are slightly below average, plus a Laramie Tunsil from a pass blocking standpoint has been well above average. Tunsil has, come into the season, we said, he's not the elite left tackle people think, but he's played up to that level this year, so maybe he has been, been that guy. I think he's the epitome of the guy that shores up a spot that is so bad that it might take them from 25th to 15th, as far as grade goes. Because if they had Julianne Davenport there again, I don't think we're telling the same story.
No.
That is one player strongly impacting things.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, they paid a lot to make it happen, but nobody ever doubted that the Tunsil thing was an upgrade for the Texans. It was definitely an upgrade. The issue with the trade was how much it cost to make it happen. Not that they got a bad player.
Right.
They definitely got a huge upgrade on the offensive line. Maybe not a guy that was ever going to become, a top 1, 2, 3 tackle, but a significant upgrade over the perennial. Well, maybe if Julian Davenport learns how to play, we'll be okay. So good move. And the offensive line, as you say, it has successfully achieved creep back toward average status.
They did it.
Have they become the first
far.
offensive line that's actually managed that?
was funny because the Vikings almost did it last year.
They got close and then plunged back down to earth.
No, others have through the years. We can look at other examples, I think.
Okay.
Again, it might be tough to recognize it because it does feel like Watson is still taking more sacks, but again, the offensive line itself. Right now, Laramie Tunsil with the number 5 pass blocking grade in the NFL among tackles. So that's been helpful.
Yeah.
What else you got?
We have a question in the live chat box within the YouTube video from Dara O. I'm going to pronounce that for you because I suspect you'd make a mess of it. Dara O. Basically, he's talked about it, but there's a lot of people asking the same kind of thing, which is let's talk Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
How good is he? How valuable is that? And just generally all the stuff around, because he's getting MVP talk, right? And you know that I hate the MVP as an award, but if we're going to countenance that kind of thing, we have to actually start talking about his value,
right?
And how important all that is.
Yeah, so I think it's similar to what we talked about with Le'Veon Bell. I still, as good as the Panthers have been now the last few weeks without Cam Newton, and Christian McCaffrey a couple weeks ago reeling off, getting that big run that was huge. You mentioned getting a whole bunch of games where he's catching 8-10 passes and all that stuff. It's valuable. I do think people also look just like efficiency standpoint. It's still well below what the top receivers would do. I still look at a running back as more the icing on the cake in the offense. So when you have a better, you'd still rather throw to receivers is the point, right? And if you have a receiver and you have a tight end, and then so like if you're the Chiefs, right, and you have Tyreek Hill and you have Travis Kelce, if you then added Christian McCaffrey to that offense, it's like, okay, that's incredible. But it's kind of like that third, even if he gets all this volume and catching 8 checkdowns a game isn't all that valuable. It's great for fantasy. It's great for your production. It's great for those numbers that say, oh, look, he's got more yards than the Jets.
Yeah.
But it's still not a favorable way to play offense unless the places where it is favorable is when you are actually dictating matchups. So to me, I like the matchup dictation. I've got him out wide against a linebacker. I've got him a little bit in the screen game where, I know I can get him into space. That's different from catching checkdowns. So that's where I think McCaffrey's a little bit inflated from a value standpoint. But I like the fact that you can use him as a receiver. You can run drags. You can run slants. You can create mismatches. And that is valuable. That's where McCaffrey and Kamara and potentially Saquon separate themselves from the other running backs.
Yeah, it was kind of too perfect for the people that don't, that hate running backs and think they're not at all valuable in any way, shape, or form, that McCaffrey leaves the game with, I think what they were claiming is cramps after the fact. And his backup,
Reggie
Bonifant, comes in and breaks off like a 60-yard run.
Former Louisville quarterback.
Right.
Is what he was.
So, it doesn't help your case if you're like, McCaffrey's the most important player in any team. He's the MVP, most valuable player in the league. He takes a step to the sideline for a minute to, ease some cramping, and his backup rattles off a 60-yard, ices the game. Which is kind of the point in all this, right? Is that, it's not that running backs are bad players. It's not that they don't do some great things a lot of the time. It's that, by and large, overall, they are more of a product of their environment than they are crafting their environment. Like, they're not the thing determining that they are going to be successful. They're the thing that rides whether the environment is successful or not.
I like to compare, when you're in a class. So you're taking a class with Dr. Eric Eager, say.
The doctor.
And he gives you the syllabus, and he's like, all right, class, during this semester, we're going to have 3 big exams, and they're going to be 30% each. That's 90% of your grade. But then there's also 10% for whatever else it is, a special project, just class participation, just showing up, whatever it is. I look at running backs still as more like the 10%, the 15%, where if you have the other pieces in place, that 10 to 15% can be extremely valuable. It could take you from a B to an A, right? It could take you from a C to a B just by having them there. That's still what I look at with running backs. In the Patriots offense, you don't want to run the offense through James White, but if Josh Gordon's taken away and your other top, and Edelman's taken away, it's nice to have that next option in a given game where you have the mismatch available. And this is the same thing we said about Le'Veon Bell. in his prime. Like the Steelers weren't run through Le'Veon Bell. It was through Big Ben, Antonio Brown, eventually Juju when he got there, even though Juju and Le'Veon didn't play together a whole lot. It's still Big Ben in his receivers. But, oh, by the way, when you have Le'Veon running wide receiver routes, that's extremely valuable as a topper there.
Yeah. So they haven't actually run the numbers yet, but just having knowledge of how the system works, I was asking the good doctor, Eric Eager, what kind of WAR number McCaffrey would have. So that's our wins above replacement metric. Apparently they've stolen it from baseball or something, Steve, as a concept. I don't know anything about that, but
me neither. I don't know anything about baseball.
Right. It's our attempt at creating this wins above replacement number and literally quantifying the value that players have, as opposed to just getting all wishy-washy with it when it comes to MVP time. And basically, if you know anything about PFF's WAR metric, it's all of the passing components are the important things. Quarterback, obviously the most important position by far. Like the top 20 players are almost always quarterbacks. After that, it's pass catchers. The guys quarterbacks are actually throwing the ball to, the guys getting the yardage at the end of it. Then it's people stopping the pass. Then it's people rushing the passer. Everything to do with the passing game on either side of the ball. And running backs basically are pretty low down the list almost always. McCaffrey is one of the more valuable running backs because he is a vital and useful part of the passing game, as we talked about. He is, we've said before, I think he could genuinely play at least slot receiver, probably wide receiver, and do it to a decent level in the NFL. And there aren't many running backs to whom you could say that. There are guys that can be split out for a few plays, but I think he could really play a different position and be fine. So he's good at the right things in order to be valuable. But even with that, they're not as valuable as just a true wide receiver, as you said, or a quarterback. So Eric estimates that his WAR is on track for something like 0.75.
I was going to say maybe 1.
Right, less than a full win, essentially above replacement. Whereas the top quarterbacks are the guys that are pushing into multiple wins.
They're at 3 or 4.
Right, way above the running back. So as good as Christian McCaffrey has been, and as with the Stevenson, you can see the Stevenson is our version of the best players in the NFL.
Right, we take value out of it.
Forget the value, just best. How well is he playing? How good is he? He's on that short list. You can definitely make the argument right now that Christian McCaffrey is in the top 5 best players in the NFL in 2019. You can't really make the argument that he's among the 5 most valuable players. So anybody going out there and saying McCaffrey deserves MVP consideration, only if you have a flawed interpretation of what value actually is. Is that true?
If you want to look at why WAR does that, I think the simplest way to do it is to look at essentially how much these guys are adding. How much is the player adding per play, and then how often are they doing it? So the reason why the quarterbacks are the highest is because the best quarterbacks are going to average 8 yards per attempt, say, right? And then they're going to throw the ball 550, 600 times. Right? So that's a ton. Mm-hmm. That's a ton of yards that they're adding. That's a ton of value that they're adding to the team. Not that all those yards are theirs, but it's just an example, right? A good receiver might average 14 or 15 per catch times 100. So the quarterback's throwing 600 times. The receiver's throwing maybe catching 100 balls at 14 or 15 per if they're really good. So that's pretty valuable. Then a running back, just receiving the ball is going to be like 8, 9, 10 yards per reception, well below the receiver. And even if they have the same volume and they get up to 80, 90, or 100 catches, even that's well below the receiver. And then you add in all those carries, and they're 4.5 per pop on the ground times 150. But the difference between 4.5 and 4.8 and 4.2 is generally dependent on other people. So that's my simplest explanation of why it's QBs, wide receivers, and tight ends who catch the ball down the field, and then running backs as far as pass game value.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.